The chamber had been carved from a single slab of obsidian black crystal, wide enough to swallow cities. Light bent strangely along its walls, refracting through ancient geometric seams that had not been touched since before most stars in the galaxy were born. This was the Imperial War Council, where civilizations ended with votes and entire species became footnotes. High Strategos Veilcor stood at the center dais, hands folded behind his back, his posture flawless. Age had silvered the ridges along his elongated skull, but it had not dulled his confidence. It had sharpened it. He had never lost a campaign. Not once in 2 centuries. A holographic projection flared to life before him. A small blue world rotated slowly. Designation? Veilcor asked. Sol 3, replied the strategist adept, a thin creature with metallic filigree embedded along its jaw. Native species refers to it as Earth. A murmur rippled through the council, amusement, not concern. Veilcor tilted his head. Assessment. Single-star system. Limited extrasolar colonies. No unified galactic alliances. Fragmented governance. Short-lived dominant species. Another council member chuckled openly. They still argue among themselves, don't they? Yes, the adept confirmed. Frequently. Even under threat. The laughter grew louder. Veilcor raised one finger, and the chamber fell silent at once. And their military? The hologram shifted. Fleets appeared, small, angular vessels clustered defensively around Earth and its colonies. Ground formations followed. Infantry. Armor. Aircraft. Primitive by Imperial standards. They maintained standing forces and... The adept hesitated, then continued. A doctrine they call special operations. Veilcor's mouth curved in faint disbelief. Explain. Small units. Independent command authority. Emphasis on infiltration, sabotage, and leadership decapitation. For a heartbeat, the chamber was quiet. Then the laughter returned, sharper this time. Small units? One counselor scoffed. Against fleets? Independent authority? Another added. That borders on chaos. Veilcor allowed the mirth to run its course. He had learned long ago that confidence, when shared, became doctrine. Short-lived species, he said calmly. Emotion-driven. They confuse bravery with effectiveness. He gestured, and the hologram zoomed out, revealing the Imperial Armada. Thousands of vessels, layered in disciplined formation, blotting out starlight. Wars are not won by cleverness, Veilcor continued. They are won by inevitability. He turned back to the image of Earth. Small. Fragile. Authorize the campaign. The adept bowed. By your command. Across the void, engines ignited. The first colony fell in under 6 hours. Orbital defenses were erased before their crews understood what they faced. Imperial dropships descended like falling continents, disgorging mechanized legions that advanced without hesitation. Human resistance was fierce, but disorganized. Courage bled out against mass. Reports streamed in. Another colony. Another capitulation. On Earth, the sky burned. The chamber beneath the Himalayan plateau was not meant for ceremony. Its walls were bare composite, scarred by decades of emergency use. Screens glowed with casualty figures no one wanted to say aloud. President Alcott slammed a hand against the table. We need a unified response. Now. You're asking for one. General Hayes replied, voice tight. From a world that can't even agree on trade tariffs. Then say it. Alcott snapped. Say we're finished. Silence answered him. At the far end of the table, Admiral Rios didn't speak. She simply slid a thin data slate forward. General Hayes glanced at it, then looked up. Is that active? It never deactivated, Rios said. Alcott frowned. What is it? Hayes exhaled slowly. A contingency. Define that, the president demanded. Black classified units, Hayes said. Off the books. Off the chain. Rios leaned forward. They're not designed to win wars. Alcott stared at her. Then why activate them? Because, she said quietly, they're designed to make enemies bleed where they don't expect it. A new designation flashed on the central screen. SAS, operational readiness confirmed. No applause followed. No speeches. Only consent. Back in Imperial space, Vale Corps reviewed the campaign updates with measured satisfaction. Human fleet engagements? He asked. Minimal, the adept replied. They are withdrawing rather than contesting space. Wise, Vale Corps said. They recognize inevitability. A junior strategist hesitated. There is an anomaly. Vale Corps turned slowly. Explain. A logistics relay in the Thesca corridor experienced catastrophic failure. Fuel reserves compromised. We suspect. Mechanical? Vale Corps interrupted. Yes, High Strategos. Vale Corps nodded. Then correct it. Do not distract the Council with maintenance errors. As you command. The strategist withdrew. Vale Corps returned his gaze to the star map. Human resistance was collapsing exactly as predicted. Their silence confirmed it. They had no counterstroke. No answer. On the edge of Imperial space, a maintenance hatch drifted silently away from a fuel relay station. Inside the shadow of the structure, a human figure floated, motionless except for the slow adjustment of thrusters. His visor reflected warning lights blinking out one by one. Captain Elias Crow checked his wrist display. Objective complete. He tapped twice on his comm. Crow to command, he said softly. First cut delivered. There was a pause. Then a reply, calm, measured. Copy that. Exfiltrate. Crow pushed away from the station and vanished into the dark. Behind him, the relay's core destabilized. The Empire would notice soon. Back in the War Council chamber, Vale Corps concluded the session with practiced finality. Within one cycle, he declared, Earth will be compliant. The Council rose as one. And somewhere in the vastness of space, something shifted, small, precise, and unseen. The Empire was still laughing. For now. The fuel relay's destruction did not announce itself with an explosion. It began with a whisper, an imbalance no automated diagnostic could quite explain. Pressure differentials crept across the system. Temperature variances followed. By the time alarms activated, the relay's core was already failing from the inside out, its safeguards quietly turned against one another. Imperial Command labeled it a malfunction. Captain Elias Crow watched the relay collapse from a distance, its structure folding in on itself like a dying star. He felt no satisfaction. Only confirmation. Telemetry complete, whispered Sergeant Malik over the comm. Cascade is clean. Good, Crow replied. No signatures? Nothing they'll recognize. Crow adjusted his thrusters and drifted away from the debris field. Around him, the stars were sharp and cold, indifferent to what had just begun. This was not a victory. It was a test. 3 hours later, Crow stood inside a stripped-down briefing bay aboard a human stealth carrier hidden beyond the system's heliopause. The room was utilitarian, bare metal, muted lights, no insignia. The men and women around him did not need symbols. They already belong. Crow activated the holodisplay. Imperial supply lanes flared into view, branching like arteries across occupied space. This, he said, pointing to the Thesca corridor, feeds 3 invasion fleets. Lieutenant Harper crossed her arms. Past tense? Crow nodded. For now. Malik leaned forward. They'll reroute? They will, Crow agreed. Using centralized command protocols. A few smiles appeared. Not wide. Not careless. Understanding smiles. Crow's voice remained even. That's our window. He shifted the display. New targets appeared, repair hubs, command relays, officer transit routes. We don't hold territory. We don't fight fleets. We don't seek glory, he said. We cut support. We remove leaders. We vanish. Harper raised a brow. And if they adapt? Crow met her gaze. Then we change first. That was the difference. It always had been. The Imperial repair flotilla arrived precisely when doctrine dictated. Automated drones swarmed the damaged corridor, their movements precise, predictable. Crews followed established safety arcs. No deviation. No improvisation. Crow's team was already inside. They moved without urgency, magnetized booths silent against the inner hull. The relay's interior was a cathedral of engineering, smooth surfaces, glowing conduits, systems designed for obedience, not creativity. Malik knelt beside a junction node. Access achieved? Proceed, Crow said. He watched the readouts as Malik rewired fail-safes into liabilities, turning redundancies into triggers. Nearby, Harper ghosted through the maintenance level, slipping past sensors calibrated to detect threats that announced themselves. Crow paused at a viewport. Beyond it, an Imperial engineer floated past, unaware that his world was already collapsing. Crow did not hate him. He simply removed the future he expected. Hours later, the repair flotilla withdrew. The relay resumed operations. Imperial Command congratulated itself on efficiency. 30 minutes after that, the fuel reserves began contaminating themselves. Not explosively. Subtly. Across 3 fleets, engines faltered. Power curves dipped. Schedules slipped. Veilcore read the reports in silence. Recurring failures? He asked. Yes, High Strategos, the Adept replied. The corridor remains unstable. Veilcore's crest tightened. Escalate maintenance oversight. It has already been doubled. Then triple it. The Adept hesitated. There is no evidence of hostile action. Veilcore waved a dismissive hand. Then there is nothing to discuss. He turned away, irritation flickering briefly behind his composure. Machines failed. Systems aged. Empires endured. That was law. Crow's team exfiltrated through vacuum, docking with the stealth carrier without incident. Inside, the air smelled faintly of recycled metal and antiseptic. How long until they realize? Malik asked, removing his helmet. Crow considered the question. They'll notice patterns. Eventually. Harper smirked. By then, we'll have changed them. Crow allowed himself a thin smile. Exactly. An encrypted transmission blinked to life on the central console. Earth Command, priority. Crow opened it. Admiral Rios appeared, her expression composed but tight. Your actions are causing delays across 3 sectors. That's the point, Crow replied. We're seeing something else, she said. They're blaming themselves. Crow's eyes narrowed slightly. Good. Rios hesitated. You're certain this will scale? Crow answered without pause. Doctrine always does. The feed cut. Imperial morale did not crack overnight. It eroded. Fuel rationing was introduced. Temporarily. Officers missed scheduled transfers. Patrols doubled back unnecessarily. Minor frustrations accumulated, small enough to dismiss individually, heavy enough together to bend discipline. Whispers began. Veilcore convened a tactical review. Human resistance? He asked. Minimal, a commander replied. They avoid direct engagement. Then why? Veilcore said softly. Do my fleets advance slower each cycle? No one answered. On the far edge of Imperial-controlled space, Crow prepared the next move. He stood alone in the armory, checking his rifle with practiced care. The weapon was unremarkable by galactic standards, solid, adaptable, reliable. Like its maker. Malik appeared in the doorway. Next target's high risk. Crow didn't look up. All of them are. They've increased patrol density. Crow locked the rifle into place. Predictable? Yes. Then acceptable. Malik hesitated. Command wants to know if we should leave a message. Crow considered this for a moment. No, he said finally. Not yet. He paused, then added, but collect something. Something they'll recognize. The next Imperial commander to die never saw his attacker. He collapsed mid-briefing, lifeless before his guards reacted. No alarms triggered. No weapon discharge detected. Only confusion. Hours later, Imperial intelligence recovered a data shard embedded in the chamber wall. It carried no threat. No declaration. Only a timestamp. And a human unit insignia they did not understand. For the first time since the invasion began, the Empire did not laugh. It listened. Show up on scanners. By the third week of the campaign, the Empire had stopped calling the disruptions accidents. They used softer words, anomalies, statistical noise, localized instability, but the meaning beneath them had changed. Ships arrived late. Officers failed to report. Entire command nodes went silent without a shot fired. The invasion continued, but it no longer moved with certainty. It limped. Imperial troops began to glance over their shoulders. Crow watched the shift unfold from the quiet darkness of an observation blister, his team spread across 3 systems, never clustered, never predictable. He studied patterns the Empire couldn't see because it didn't believe in them. Fear didn't come from destruction. It came from absence. Another command vacancy. Harper reported over the secure channel. 4th this cycle. Confirmed cause, Crow said. Confirmed. Target collapsed during transit. No external trauma. Crow nodded once. Mark the corridor unsafe. That'll reroute traffic again. That's the idea. He closed the channel and pulled the star map closer. Imperial doctrine assumed continuity, that command always flowed downward, that replacements arrived on schedule, that the system healed itself. Humans knew better. Systems broke when you removed the people who made decisions. Not leaders. Deciders. On the Imperial flagship Ascendant Will, Veilcourse stared at the projection in front of him, crest rigid with controlled irritation. Say it again, he said. The intelligence officer swallowed. The losses are not fleet engagements. They are absences. Gaps. Veilcourt's gaze sharpened. And your conclusion? The officer hesitated. The humans are not resisting. They are interfering. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Veilcourt silenced it with a gesture. Interference implies intent. Purpose. These are raiders. Irregulars. Yes, high strategos, the officer said carefully. But they are coordinated. Veilcourt turned away, pacing slowly. No species coordinates chaos. That is a contradiction. He stopped. Deploy hunter fleets. The officer stiffened. Against what target? Veilcourt's eyes burned. Against the idea that this is acceptable. The hunter fleets arrived with precision and overwhelming force. They found nothing. Crow's team dissolved before contact, shedding heat signatures, abandoning positions minutes before arrival. Imperial sensors scanned empty space where humans had been seconds earlier. Feels like they're chasing shadows, Malik muttered. They are, Crow replied. We're letting them. Harper's voice cut in. They're tightening patrols. Randomizing schedules. Crow adjusted the map. Not random. Delayed. They're adapting, she said. No, Crow corrected. They're reacting. That distinction mattered. Crow keyed a private channel. Phase 3. There was no response. None was needed. The next strike wasn't lethal. It was visible. An Imperial patrol discovered one of its own supply depots breached, not destroyed, not sabotaged, simply opened. Containers lay neatly arranged, inventory logged and untouched. At the center of the depot, a single officer knelt, alive but shaking. He told them what he'd seen. They were already inside, he said, voice cracking. They spoke our language. Not fluently, but enough. They asked questions. Then they left. The report spread faster than any explosion could have. Ghosts. Humans who walked through walls. Enemies who chose when to kill, and when not to. Veilcourt slammed his hand against the command table. Enough, he snapped. I want one of them alive. Crow anticipated the order before it was given. They're hunting now, Malik said, reviewing sensor data. Actively. Crow nodded. Then we stop running. Harper looked up sharply. You're not serious. I am. Capture is not extraction, she warned. Crow met her eyes. It doesn't have to be. Silence followed. Then Malik spoke. You're thinking flagship. Crow inclined his head. Command Corps. Doctrine Center. They don't believe anyone reaches it. Harper shook her head. That's suicide. No, Crow said quietly. It's education. The trap was elegant. Crow allowed a trail, faint, imperfect, just convincing enough. Imperial trackers followed it eagerly, closing in with practiced efficiency. The hunter fleet converged, confident for the first time in weeks. Crow did not resist. When the boarding team breached his position, he stood with his weapon powered down, hands visible, expression calm. The Imperial commander stared at him. You're smaller than expected. Crow said nothing. Restraints snapped into place. Energy dampeners hummed. As Crow was led away, he glanced once at the shadows beyond the corridor. Harper's voice whispered in his ear. You better be right about this. Crow allowed himself a single breath. I always am. Veilcore studied the human from across the containment field. So, he said, circling slowly, you are the anomaly. Crow met his gaze, unblinking. You cost me time. Veilcore continued. Resources. Reputations. Crow's voice was steady. You cost us worlds. Veilcore dismissed the comment. You are one operative. You cannot change inevitability. Crow tilted his head slightly. You still think this is about me? Veilcore paused. Isn't it? Crow smiled faintly. No. The Ascendant will adjusted course, carrying its prize deeper into Imperial space. Hunter fleets disengaged, reassigned. Patrols relaxed. For the first time in weeks, the Empire felt in control again. Crow stood alone in his cell, listening to the hum of a machine built by minds that believed perfection could be permanent. He memorized rhythms, redundancies, delays. He learned how the ship breathed. Above him, Veilcore prepared a declaration of restored order. Below, Crow counted seconds. The Empire believed the ghost had been caught. It did not yet understand that ghosts chose when to be seen, and when to strike from inside. The Ascendant will did not creak or shudder. It moved with the serene confidence of something that had never known danger. Its corridors were wide, its systems layered in redundancies meant to endure centuries, not moments of doubt. To the Empire, this ship was permanence made metal. To Elias Crow, it was a machine built by people who believed failure only came from outside. He stood within the containment field, eyes half-lidded, breathing slow. Every sound mattered, the faint harmonic of the power conduits, the staggered pulse of security sweeps, the fractional delay between internal communications relays. The ship spoke constantly. Most never listened. Crow listened. The field shimmered as Veilcore entered the chamber, flanked by guards who kept their weapons angled just slightly away from Crow. The strategos studied him with a mixture of irritation and curiosity, like a puzzle that refused to solve itself. You are calm, Veilcore observed. Most prisoners are not. Crow lifted his gaze. Most prisoners think they've lost. Veilcore's eyes narrowed. You believe you haven't? I believe, Crow replied evenly, that you brought me here because you don't understand us. Veilcore gave a thin smile. I understand enough. You disrupt. You hide. You die. Crow shook his head once. You still think disruption is the goal. And what is it then? Veilcore demanded. Teaching, Crow said. The strategos scoffed. You presume to instruct an empire older than your species' history. Crow's expression didn't change. Age doesn't equal flexibility. Veilcore turned away, dismissing him. You will be studied. Then forgotten. The guards moved to leave. Crow watched the door close. And began counting. The containment field failed exactly 12 seconds later. Not because it was weak, but because it relied on a centralized authority to maintain coherence. Crow had noticed the delay earlier, subtle enough to escape automated notice. He'd exploited it using a tool no Imperial system recognized, a manual override key to pressure variance, improvised from a fragment concealed beneath his sleeve. The field flickered. Crow moved. The first guard fell before his weapon cleared its holster. The second hesitated, only for a breath, but that breath was enough. Crow caught the falling rifle and fired once, precise, terminal. Alarm screamed. Crow was already running. The Ascendant will reacted exactly as designed. Bulkhead sealed. Security teams mobilized. Command protocols rerouted authority upward, concentrating decision-making where it always lived, at the top. Crow slipped through a maintenance shaft as plasma scorched the corridor behind him. He didn't flee blindly. Every turn had been chosen long before he stepped into the containment field. He knew which systems talked to which redundancies shared blind spots, which protocols had never been tested under improvisation. Imperial ships didn't expect intruders to think. Crow reached the first junction and planted a charge, not to destroy, but to confuse. The explosion triggered 3 separate failsafes, each assuming a different cause. The systems argued with themselves. The ship began to hesitate. On the bridge, Veilcor felt it before the reports arrived. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Internal breach," an officer replied. "Multiple contradictory signals. Command relays are." The lights dimmed, then surged. Veilcor's crest flared. "Isolate sectors. Seal him in. We are attempting." The ship lurched. Crow reached the primary command spine as the Ascendant will struggled to reconcile itself. He connected a data spike directly into the exposed conduit and uploaded something simple. Not a virus. A question. The system paused. That pause propagated. Across the ship, subroutines waited for clarification that never came. Weapons went offline, then online, then offline again. Navigation froze, caught between incompatible priorities. Crow pulled free and ran. The first human strike fleet emerged from fold space precisely on cue. Small. Fast. Decentralized. Imperial sensors detected them too late, their targeting solutions lagging behind ships that refused to move predictably. Human vessels didn't form lines. They didn't advance together. They struck where the Empire wasn't looking. Veilcor watched the battle unfold in disbelief. "This is impossible," he whispered. His officers shouted conflicting reports. Systems refused commands. Fleets waited for orders that never stabilized. The Empire's greatest strength, control, had become its weakness. Crow reached an escape pod as the Ascendant will began to tear itself apart. He sealed the hatch and launched, the pod spinning away from the dying flagship. Through the viewport, he watched the vessel rupture, not in fire, but in cascading failure. A god undone by doubt. The pod jolted as it was tractored in by a human frigate. The hatch opened. Harper stood there, helmet off, eyes sharp. "You took your time." Crow allowed himself a breath. "Had to be thorough." Malik appeared behind her, grinning. "Empire's retreating across 6 sectors." Crow nodded. "They will." "And after?" Harper asked. Crow looked back at the stars, where Imperial formations scattered like startled animals. "After they remember." Days later, the Galactic Council reconvened in stunned silence. Veilcor did not attend. The Empire issued its first ceasefire and recorded history. On Earth, there were no parades. Crow returned to anonymity, his name erased from records that never officially acknowledged him. He cleaned his weapon, stored his gear, and waited for the next order that might never come. Humanity did not claim dominance. It claimed survival. And across the galaxy, civilizations whispered a new truth. The gods had laughed. Then they bled. And they learned what humans did best: endure.